Hi, I'm Mark Verkler with Samaritan's Well. This is our Soul Sense podcast. And today I've got Lorisa Miller, a co-founder of Upper Room Dallas and a senior leader there. And welcome, Lorisa.
Hi, thanks, Mark. Great to see you.
So glad you're on. Marie and I've been at Upper Room since 2011, so
Wow.
we've seen a lot of things in almost 13 years there. It's been a great journey.
Yeah, it has.
Today we're talking about coming to God with our pain
Hmm.
and in our pain.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity. This is the topic that's I know is on your heart. But if you could, Larissa, just start with, your first thoughts about coming to God in our pain, coming to God with our pain.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. I think, having been in ministry now for 14 years, I have seen um, just the sort of the religious boxes that we kind of get stuck in when we go through life. We go through hard things, and I've seen that like much of the church um, does, and I didn't either know how to handle just pain and life.
Yeah.
I think is full of pain, and even the life of the believer, although different, is still full of pain. It's not ever promised that we wouldn't have pain, and knowing what to do with it, knowing who God is in the midst of it, how to meet with Him. I think those are skills and practices and ways that we need help in, to be honest. Yeah.
Tell me an example of just how you've approached God in something painful, in just kind of the way that you've taken it to Him.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't know before and you learned something through an experience or something like that.
I think something over the years that I've learned, we at Upper Room have one of the things that has marked this house is that we have a house of prayer. And
Hmm.
so we are open all week long with live worship and prayer almost all day long. And so there's someone, singing, ministering to the Lord, and there might be somebody praying on a mic, but for sure there will probably be worship happening. And um, one of the beautiful things that the Lord provides is a place to just be in His presence when we are hurting. And I think that um, the religion will like want to fix our pain, and of course we want to fix our pain because we'd like for it to
Right.
go away. But being with the Lord, allowing Him to be who He is, and being in His presence is it touches that pain and heals that pain over time. And not only does it heal it, it also, you walk away knowing God more and deeper and more intimately than you ever could have in another way. And so I guess I would say that something that I've learned is to just come and be with God in that pain. And I've watched, I can just remember times of feeling great disappointment, great discouragement, great even feelings of being betrayed or loss, the death of a loved one or somebody we've been praying to be healed and they weren't, and just crying in the presence of the Lord. And that being a safe place to grieve and to mourn, that honestly has comforted me and touched that pain like nothing else has. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. And isn't it something, to me, it's so profound when we cry, we're actually humbling ourselves to cry.
Yes.
Years ago, I had a lady that came in and she was really bummed out because she had just been crying and weeping and crying and weeping so much over the last
Mm.
season. And she's like, I finally took it to the Lord. I said, Lord, I'm just so tired of crying. And he asked her this question. He said, she got quiet, and it was like the Lord said, why do you think I put your tears in a public place.
Wow.
I could have made you
Wow.
cry in a secret place on your body, but
Wow.
I put them there for the humility, but also that the body could join with you in
Wow.
your tears.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, that's always struck me. And it's like she
Yeah.
looked at grieving in a different way. You
Yeah.
know, I tell people, Jesus says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Well, you
Yes.
can always turn scripture around. What about those who don't mourn?
Right.
They're missing that comfort. And so
Right.
you're saying when you've come to the Lord in his presence with
Right.
that grief or heaviness, you've cried those tears.
Right.
It sounds like you're saying that consistently there's been a comfort, there's been a meeting.
Yes, and it's God also identifying, Jesus, when he came to earth and he put on skin, and and one of the great gifts to us is that, see, I'm getting emotional.
Yes,
Is
this is
one of
good.
the one of the great gifts to us is that he knows what it feels like. I don't know if you watched The Chosen, but I just watched the episode where John the Baptist dies and you see
Uh-huh.
Jesus mourning and grieving his cousin, even though he
Uh-huh.
knows
Oh, yes.
what's on the other side. And so I think
Yes.
sensing his friendship, his nearness, and his empathy in our pain is a great, great gift. And so I think that point, Mark, about if you don't mourn, you will not make room for the comforter to comfort you.
Yes. 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 And doesn't it say that in Isaiah it says he's a man of sorrows, intimately acquainted with grief?
Wow.
How intimately acquainted. And what I find sometimes is I'll tell my clients a lot of times they'll default when they go through pain of anger is easy, but the mourning is not,
No.
or the crying or the mourning is easier and the anger is not.
Mm.
But there has to be that combination when you're hurting,
Yeah.
because a lot of times there is an anger about an injustice, you know, even if it maybe is towards God.
Yes.
But, I mean, we could bring that to him too, right?
Totally. Yeah, I think, and because here's the thing that you realize about God is that he knows it all anyway. He sees it all anyway, but what he's inviting is, now would you trust me enough to share that with me? Do you
Yeah.
trust me that I can handle it? Because no human on earth can handle the depths of our anger, our pain, our but he can. And I think I just can remember times when I was so frustrated, didn't understand why he didn't come through in this way or that way. And he just would say, "Let me have it, Lorisa. Like, give it
Oh,
to me.
wow.
Give me all you got. Like, come at me." And I think because he's big enough to handle it. And he wants to comfort, you know?
Yeah, he wants to comfort. I mean, isn't that his middle name, Comforter?
Yes.
You know, he tells his disciples, "Hey, I've been a comforter to you. I'm going away, but I'm sending another comforter." It's his middle name too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think too that when we go through something, we are mad at him, so we will stiff arm him or
Yeah.
protect ourselves from him, and he's actually the only one who can comfort us. So we are distancing ourselves from the very
The
one
w
who
Yeah, the
claimed
primary
it.
source of comfort.
Yes. Yes.
Larissa, what do you think about, and I know you even mentioned this just really briefly, but how does that spirit of religion, that performance thing, get in the way of us coming to God and being real and just weeping or mourning before Him?
Yeah, I think you know, we put these, I think a lot of it is in our language, and
Okay.
like, well, his will be done, and we just got to be thankful. And of course his will be done, and of course we're thankful. But I think I have found, I'm not always really good with expressing myself, and I have found a lot
Mhm.
of help in the Psalms to
Okay.
express my heart when I'm going through something. I begin reading them out loud to the Lord, and then I can find language to help me be very honest, because love rejoices in the truth. And I believe that
Yes.
He is looking for that level of honesty from us. And so I think religion, though, has like told us we should not be upset, and we feel ashamed if we are
Right.
upset, but but then we can't ever get better, we never move on. I think also the
Right.
enemy's lying to us, and he's
Yes.
saying the enemy's think has us thinking that that pain is so great that if we ever open the door, it will overwhelm us and we won't live through it,
Right.
which you probably know what so much more about than I do.
Yeah. I mean, I had someone in just recently and I said, wow, you have been like running full speed to try to stay ahead of this grief train.
Yes.
And you just have to stop and let it hit you.
Yes.
Right? That's part of that death to self. You
Oh,
have to let that grief hit you.
yeah.
In it, but it's hard, right? It is hard because you have that lie that it's going to be too much for me to take,
Yeah.
or let's just say I'm not supposed to be. Let's say part of it is I'm offended with God. I'm not supposed to be angry with God. And
Right.
I tell people, let's just say for a moment that you are offended with God. Is it better for you to lie to yourself and him about it, or
Right.
be honest?
Yes. Yes. And yes, if Jesus himself hung on that cross and he said, my God, why have you forsaken
Right.
me?" He
Right.
he showed us what it's like to be human, and yet in coming to him, we are expressing trust. We are saying, I still trust you. I may be offended,
Yes.
but I trust you because I'm
Yes.
opening my heart to you.
Yes. And you look at that approach. I mean, John the Baptist clearly was entering towards that offense stage when
Yeah.
he's rotting in, Herod's prison and Jesus is out turning water into wine and miracles. And now he's the superstar, right? And
Right.
so, but what does he do? He comes to the Lord with it.
Yes.
Now, granted, it was kind of, you could tell he's offended. He's like, well, are you really the Messiah or should we look for someone else?
Yeah.
And Jesus say, hey, hang on, this is a good miracle day, right? So he's doing all these miracles, but he says, tell John all these things. But the one thing that was a prophecy about the Messiah that he didn't share was set the captives free.
Wow.
So he was telling John, no, you're not going to be free.
Yeah.
These other things are happening. You're not going to be free. Oh, and tell John, blessed are those who are not offended with me.
Whew.
That's a tough word, but look at what John did right. He owned something that was there and he came to the Lord with it. And Jeremiah did the same thing in Lamentations 3.
Mm.
He's like, for 19 verses, he's like, oh Lord, I'm so offended with you. You've been playing games with me, etc. But they both do the right thing. Just like you said, they come to God with it exactly where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the surrender of coming to him,
Yeah.
and yeah, and there's so many precious passages I think of, about how he catches our tears in a bottle, which, I mean, something I love about you, Mark, is you always have a revelation that's even sweeter than it is at face value. But I think, what is that? Is it a children's song or book that says, you can't go over it, can't go under it. You've got
Oh
to
yeah.
go through it. And the
Yes.
longer we avoid the through, the more messes we create, the longer we
Yes.
delay and prolong our pain.
Yes. Yes. And an example of that, Larissa, there's so many, but just the last few days, I was talking to a lady. She's depressed for sure. We see clear symptoms of depression. She's
Mm,
also very angry with herself. And
mm,
so I was talking to her on the phone before our first session, and I was saying, okay, I don't know all the sources of your depression, but I know one of them is because you're mad at you,
Mm.
right? And the old school definition of depression is anger turned inward. Now, that
Wow.
could be towards myself, towards others, or towards God, but
Wow.
all of those are things that we can bring to Him, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Man, that is powerful. Anger turned inward. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of depression is anger turned inward. Now,
Mm.
I tell people a second source of depression is simply that you need to grieve something, either
Yeah.
current or past, that you haven't grieved.
Yeah.
Because pure depression is like you're saying, it's crying the tears over something,
Yeah.
right? You've
Yeah.
been hurt recently, you've been hurt in the past, and it's been buried. So,
Uh-huh.
two of the causes of depression is I'm mad at someone. It could certainly be me or others
Mhm.
or God, or I need to grieve something. Now,
Yeah.
the third source of depression we have to watch out for. It's just a spirit of heaviness.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
sometimes we could deal with things, but there's a spirit of heaviness that's come on for the ride,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
tell people the way the enemy will work is you'll be driving down the interstate and you have to take the exit because there's something to grieve or someone to forgive or something like that. But what'll happen is while you're at the pit stop, the spirit will jump in your trunk, a spirit of fear, a spirit of
Ugh.
hate, a spirit of heaviness,
Yeah.
right? And so you have to be aware. And so, but the thing is, coming to the Lord in any or all of those cases is the way to bring it into the light.
Yeah. Do you think something that I think of sometimes is that we don't give ourselves permission or space or grace or whatever to grieve or to mourn because we judge whatever that is as like not worthy of grieving or mourning. It's like something stupid, something
Yep.
that I think, well, I should get over that. That's not a big deal. I
Yeah.
convince myself, and so then I'm just avoiding, uh, and then I never make room for it
That's
to
right.
grieve
Uh,
it.
One of my colleagues called it guardian lies, but
Mm,
it's like this guardian lie that says, "Oh, it happened so long ago,"
right.
or "I should be over it," like you said,
Mhm.
or "It's not that big a deal." I tell people one of the worst traps you can fall into is comparing your pain with someone else's.
Oh,
It's like,
wow.
here's the example I use, Larissa. You go into the emergency room and you've got a broken arm, somebody else comes in with a broken neck, and you walk back home because you're like, I'm not nearly as bad as they are.
Right. Right.
But
But you
you
still have a
need
broken
your
arm.
arm attended to,
Yeah.
right? And so you don't
Right.
want to get caught in that trap of comparing, just like you were mentioning.
Wow. We've got several people in our body that work with rescuing victims of sex trafficking or human
Uh-huh.
trafficking. They
Hmm.
work with counseling them, rescuing them, and I remember I didn't know that they were just in our body doing that work, outside
Right.
of the church. But and I once I met them, I said, "Wow, well, how can I, in my position, in my role, like, how can I bless you? What can I do to encourage you or?" And they all said the same thing to me. They said having that prayer room available and open, they said that ministers because they are touching things, seeing things that no human should ever have to see or think about. And the weight of it
Right.
is immense. And but they all said having that prayer room to come be in the presence of the Lord, to give him back those burdens. And of course, we don't need to go into a prayer room to do that, but it is a space that's cultivated where people come meet with God. And they just said that ministers to them, to their souls and the heaviness that they sometimes carry unlike anything else. And I thought that was a really profound thing to say. We have a policeman that I see often. He'll be fully dressed and on his break he's in there ministering to the Lord, and I think, man, what is he coming into contact with regularly
Yeah.
that he's able to give back to God, because we just can't handle all of that.
No, that's exactly right, and that's really beautiful, Larissa. I'm thinking back about a lady that I worked with. She was probably maybe 50 years old, and this was, many years ago. And one of her great traumas was these physical beatings that she got from her dad.
Mm.
And as we went back there and she unfolded the story, the
Wow.
big question was, God, why weren't you there? Why did you leave me alone? And
Yeah.
why didn't you stop my dad from doing
Wow.
that?
Right.
And, we prayed into that and we
Wow.
just opened the door by faith. Because in Revelation 3, he says, if you go to these painful places, I'm knocking on that door. You just have
Wow.
to open it. He's not going to barge in, but he'll come in by invitation. And
Mm.
we invited him. And I'll never forget Larissa. She said, I see the Lord. He's pleading with my dad to not do this, but
Wow.
my dad won't listen.
Wow.
Believe it or not, that was the most healing thing that she had ever had happen to her.
Wow. Wow.
And because the Lord showed he was there and he cared,
Wow.
she was healed from that trauma.
Wow.
But you see, there it is in his presence again.
In his presence. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many things, that we encounter here in people's lives, so many things that are I've felt, even, I mean, just to be personal with this,
Yeah.
there are times where I felt, I want to give someone an answer as to
Yeah.
what as I feel like as a leader, I want an answer. I want to help them with an answer. Why was my child not healed? Why did my husband leave
Right.
me? And I have felt that pressure at points that I'll put on myself, to answer the question. And I find that when God's present, He answers the question.
Yes.
He's above the question. And I don't have to always understand. Somehow I walk away. I'm okay without understanding. It's a peace that truly does pass understanding, but it's not
Yes.
just a mental assent, or it's a spiritual reality that happens in God's presence. It's difficult to put into words.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think, Larissa, so many people have come to this question from God, and I think it's a passionate and a loving question. But you get to this depth of pain, and the
Yeah.
question from the Spirit is, will you trust me even
Yeah.
if I never tell you why?
Yeah.
That's one of the deepest questions in the Christian life to answer. And
Yeah.
you can't just do it in some trite way. You
Right.
have to go to the depths, right,
Yes.
to answer. But I'm reminded, Larissa, of Deuteronomy 29:29.
Mm.
The secret things belong to the Lord our God,
Mm.
but those things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we
Wow.
may do all the words of this law. We
Wow.
can be offended that things we don't understand, why this happened, why
Mm.
this person, why did that child die, why was this prayer answered and that one not? And
Totally.
those are hard. Don't
Mhm.
give a simple answer to someone for that, right?
Mm-mm.
Don't
Mm-mm.
just give a simple answer,
Oh
because
no,
it will
a
not be
simple answer is
healing.
the worst. No.
Yes,
No,
the I
almost
call it
any answer is
Christianese,
the
right?
worst.
Yeah, it's just Christianese, right? It's these trite
Yeah,
phrases, but it's not a simple answer to say the secret things belong to the Lord. That hasn't been revealed to us. We don't know.
yeah, yeah. It's that. Again, it's his nearness that is our good in those times.
Right.
And And you know what? Some another thing that I've noticed, I'd love to talk through, and I bet you've got
Hmm.
some experience with this, is that I believe it's Psalm 34 that says that he's near to the brokenhearted. And as a
Yes.
pastor, when I am in environments where somebody is brokenhearted with what they're going through, I can sense, if they're a believer, or even if they're not, I don't know, but I can sense the nearness of God. Unlike, it's more near, it's like an extra measure of his closeness
Yes.
when the heart is broken. And I've found, like, wow, God, you're actually very, very close in those places. He saves those who are crushed in spirit. He's near to the brokenhearted. And it is his nearness that is the sustenance for the broken heart. It's not it's
Yes.
not making sense of it all. It's his
Right.
nearness.
That's so true. And I do have so many thoughts, but I mean, one of the things that comes to mind first is just, we know that Jesus came full of grace and truth. And somebody said, the grace is for the broken. The
Wow.
unbroken got a lot of truth from Jesus,
Yeah.
you know? And so, what does it say? In Isaiah 61, he came to heal the brokenhearted. And
Yeah.
so the healing is flowing where the heart is broken.
Yes.
The healing is flowing where the heart is broken. And the people that are guarding their hearts or protecting their hearts or hardening their hearts, that's pride. And he
Mm,
opposes the pride, but he gives grace to the humble. You just described how the grace of God flows. It
mm,
flows towards that low place of the brokenhearted people,
that's right. How do
always.
how do you, Mark, like, what would you, I'm thinking of somebody that once, was telling me, man, I've just realized, this person was in their, 30s, and they're just realizing trauma they went through as a child that they had repressed. So they're just now
Uh-huh.
having, memories or whatever. And they're feeling very scared to face, in therapy or in whatever. They're feeling very scared, but all, at the same time, they're feeling the invitation of God, like, I want to heal you in these places. How would we help someone, give them the courage to face it?
Maybe the first thing is a testimony from someone who has been through it.
Yeah.
I've went through this trauma and the Lord met me there. Like we've
Yeah.
had a couple of testimonies, even we've talked about today. If you
Hmm.
get a testimony, right, that will help you. Sometimes it'll help just to begin to go into it and allow it to come out in the
Yeah.
Psalms, like you said, in journaling. And
Mm,
what you'll find is the Lord begins to meet you in those places.
mm,
Obviously, I'm a little biased because I've been doing this for a long time. Come to someone who's done this with people. Come to
yeah.
someone, and it could be a lay counselor, it could be a coach, it could be a counselor like me, but come to someone who's walked people through that trauma,
Yeah.
especially if they've done it over and over. Because
Yes.
there's three things that have to happen, Larissa. And I think we see it with the trauma of Peter in John 21
Mm,
when Peter's all excited when he's running to shore because John says, "Oh, it's the Lord." But what does he see as soon as he gets to shore? He sees a fire of coals. And the
mm.
only other time a fire of coals is mentioned in scripture is when the cold night where he denied Jesus.
Woo.
Jesus is taking him back to his fire of coals. So the
Wow.
second thing that has to happen though is we have to identify what that lie is. And
Hmm.
so I believe that Peter's lie was, I don't have what it takes to be faithful to the end. And that would
Wow.
stop him from being a
Right.
disciple. If he can't be faithful to the end, he's just going to go back to fishing, which is what he tried that night before.
Right.
But the third thing that has to happen for healing is there has to be a heart connection. So I
Mm.
tell people you can't heal a heart wound with a head connection. So
Oof.
what did Jesus do? He said, Peter, he actually called him Simon. He didn't call him Peter. He said, Simon, son of your father, but Simon, do you agape me more than these? And his response is, I phileo you. Why? Because he's self protecting, like these people we're talking about.
Wow.
Oh, feed my sheep.
Hmm.
Simon, do you agape me, period? See how he lowers the standard. I phileo you. It's like they're having two conversations. He's still
Oof.
self protecting. But
Wow.
what happens the third time? Jesus says, and this is what he says in the Greek, do you even phileo me? Are you even my friend? And John says, at this he was grieved. This
Wow.
is where people get healing when their heart is opened.
Wow.
So I'm trying to take people where they need those tissues on my table, where they cry those tears and they make that emotional connection
Wow.
because, like you said, the Lord is right there. And
Amen.
so what he needed there was a rhema, and he got a rhema. You're
Wow.
going to be faithful until you die in my service as a martyr. You will
Whew.
be faithful to the end. And that wound was taken care of. That lie was taken care of from that moment on.
Wow.
That's how
Wow.
healing happens.
That is so powerful. I think that's one thing I was going to mention today as I thought about this topic. I often tell people, God gives grace to the humble. And when you ask for help, even for me, when I'm struggling with something, at the at the moment that I shoot out a text to my people that I know are gonna pray for me, cover me, the people that are gonna call me higher, the
Right.
moment I say, I'm struggling, please pray for me. The moment I do, I'm telling you, it's happened enough times where I'm like, wow, something shifts in my heart and mind, and a grace comes because I've humbled myself to say, I am struggling. I cannot do this by myself and I need help. It's more than just the
Wow.
prayer room. It's more than just my secret place. I need help with from the body. And I think whether it is a professional or an elder, just somebody that you can reach out to for help, that is a massive first step in God coming to your aid.
Oh, wow. That
Hmm.
is beautiful. And I totally agree, right? When you're reaching out, you're humbling yourself. You're
Yes.
confessing your faults, right? The Bible goes beyond even saying confessing your sins, confessing your faults. I'm just
Yeah.
struggling today. There may not be any sin. I'm just struggling.
Right. I'm before sin. I'm
Yes.
sin is knocking, but I'm not giving in, but I
Yeah.
am weak and I need help.
Yes. I am weak and I need help.
Yeah. I'm
Maybe that's where we'll pull it together. It's
yeah.
been so good talking with you today, Lorisa.
Yeah, I
Thank
love
you so much for sharing from your heart. I mean, this is what I've heard for many years. Every time you give a message, you're sharing from your heart, and that is a beautiful thing. And the
yeah.
Lord meets you there because you humble yourself. And
Oh,
that's so much of kind of what we've talked about today.
oh.
Any kind of final words before we really wrap up, Larissa?
No, I'm really grateful for who you are in the body of Christ, Mark, and even this podcast is, I was listening to some of the other episodes and it's so helpful and needed, this work that you're doing. And so I just say yes and amen to all of it. And anybody asking for help, go get help. Ask for help.
That's right. Ask for help. Thank you so much, Larissa. You
Thank you,
have a
Mark.
wonderful day, and we just really appreciate you being on the podcast, the Soul Sense podcast today.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, bye for now. If you enjoyed this podcast, please do us a favor and like, subscribe, and share with others who might need it. And you can find additional resources at SamaritansWell.com.